So happy to be joined today by a good friend of mine, Aremu Mbande of the Chicago State Male African American Resource Center. How you doing, Aremu?
I'm doing well, man. I'm doing very well. Good to see you again, Sam.
It's great to see you too. And I'm excited to catch up because we did a really in-depth Chi State pod last year about the Black History Month celebration at CSU. So why don't you give me a little sneak peek at what's in store for the rest of the month here at Chicago State?
No question. So this month, y'all, we are super excited to promote such a robust program for February. The theme of this month is lifting as we climb. Our stories continue. And we wanted to create a calendar that really illustrated the different stories of the Black and Africana experience, right? So, first, February 1st, we're having an opening ceremony to really get the campus community excited about the actual month. So we're going to have, dancers and performers and food, but we're going to distribute the calendar. And, the entire calendar is filled with stuff to really talk about, who we are as a Black global people, right? So we have a program called Carter G. Woodson, Black Education and Stories of Freedom, hosted by the Brothers of Omega Psi Fraternity Incorporated. We have the stories of Black resistance in Latin America. That's going to be facilitated by the Latino Resource Center. We have something called Black History Begins with Black Birth, which is going to be a dialogue that includes the National Council of Negro Women, the Women's Resource Center, and Chicago Birthworks Collective, which is a Black doula agency here in Chicago, and a variety of other stuff. Once the calendar, once folks, really go through the calendar, they'll be able to see what they like. But the entire month, we want to engage in dialogue. We want to facilitate presentations that really talk about our collective narrative, and that's really what Carter G. Woodson, the father of Black History Month, imagined with this program, which used to be called Negro History Week, but that we would, create a counter narrative of the Black experience that would really contribute to self-esteem building, community building, and just overall progress for Black folks. So, yeah, we're excited to carry on with this tradition that he started. More than half a century ago.
Right, and here we are in 2022 with the theme this year at Chicago State, Lifting as We Climb. Can you tell me why that was chosen?
Yeah, so lifting as we climb. The image on the calendar is of a hand that is helping up another hand, right? And really to focus on the work of Carter G. Woodson, again, who was the father of Black History Month. There was a concept that he talked about called miseducation. And it was the idea that we can get knowledge and skills and, climb up this social mobility ladder without lifting, our fellow men and women, our fellow people up so that they can progress as well, and in this month, we really want to disregard spaces of miseducation. It's cool to be educated. It's cool to make money and to succeed, but it's not cool to do that alone. So lifting as we climb really exemplifies the idea that, if one person is to be successful, then we all got to be successful. The concept of Ubuntu, which is a Zulu South African term that means, I am because we are, and we are because I am. The concept of communalism and, shared progress.
And
So,
Ubuntu, sorry to cut you off for a second, it's such a fascinating concept to me because, as you just illustrated, there's no English translation for it, right? The English translation is like a sentence. So that's a really unique concept and wonderful to incorporate into the month.
come on. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
You talk about education, Aremu, and obviously we're here on a college campus and you're putting together programming for a college campus, college kids in a big city, right? With such a rich history, third biggest city in America here in Chicago. What's the importance of education and specifically through Chicago State's role in the city?
Man, thank you. Oh, that's a good question.
It's a loaded one, and you can take it wherever you want.
Well, you know what? Education is something that, so many folks throughout Black history have tried to define and redefine, right? You got Du Bois and his idea of the classical education model. You have Booker T. Washington and more of the industrial and vocational ideas of education. You got Carter G. Woodson, Anna Julia Cooper. There's a really good dude named Jarvis Givens, who wrote this book called Fugitive Pedagogy that just came out. But in my assessment and how it connects to Chicago State University, we have to look at our core values, right? We have core values of intellectual advancement, educational development, which is a very broad term, social justice, diversity. And I think it lends itself to our understanding that education takes place in the classroom and outside of the classroom. And the outside of the classroom is really rich. If we're not developing as, social activists, are we really becoming educated? If we're not developing as, civic engagers, are we really being educated? If we're not developing as intersectional minded human beings who recognize the importance of people with different racial backgrounds and abilities and, class statuses being equal to us, are we really being educated? So I think education is a human development process where we become the best that we can be. Again, actualizing the concept of Ubuntu, I am because we are, in establishing a community where everybody looks out for one another and we're all progressing. And I think Chicago State University has shown that throughout time. I was just reading a history biography posted by the College of Education that Chicago State was integrating different racial groups in the 1920s. As we all know, the civil rights movement and segregation was still being promoted up into the 60s. So, this was a practice that really introduced the idea of multiple people being on one campus. And look at us now, we're a predominantly Black institution, not an HBCU, which means that the government had nothing to do with Black folks making this institution what it is. It was Black folks, and the institution valuing diversity. So I think that's important to note. And it all ties to our ideas of education.
1920, like so ahead of its time.
Yes.
That's amazing. Aremu, here's an important one I really want to ask you. You mentioned, right, Chicago State's a predominantly Black institution, and there's that rich history that people like you are doing so much to push forward. I'm really curious about this, and I think I asked you this on the podcast last year too, but for someone like me who comes in as a white man and is ingratiating myself into it and learning from people like you and celebrating Black history right along with you. But as a white man, what can someone like me learn in the month ahead?
Such a good question, brother. Man, a lot. I think we talked about it last year, but this concept of white supremacy, right? This practice and this system of white supremacy is not even good for white people, right? So when we begin to deconstruct race and understand how race is, an effect of multiple systems that are designed to harm humanity, I think white folks in particular, who have been racially socialized themselves, begin to unpack their own humanity, which of course translates to other people's humanities being recognized. But yeah, man, I think Black History Month is it's a counter narrative and a counter attack against humanity, right? The miseducation and diseducation of humanity. And then, as a white man who has, let's say, strong ethnic and cultural ties somewhere, a history that is not just rooted in colonialism and racism, but a history that is rooted in multiple things, including loving humanity, I think that we're able to make strong progress, regardless of how people identify, if that makes sense. So basic, Black History Month is also a program that allows everybody to be reintroduced or just introduced to their own humanity.
Introduced to their own humanity. I love that. I love that. That's an important message because I think a lot about that, how you could look at Black History Month as a celebration of just a particular group of people in a particular place, or you can look at it really in the general context, which I think is what you're hitting at, and what I'm taking away, which is it's a celebration of humanity, and at its core is all these things that make us human.
Absolutely. Come on. Yep. And it's important, man. Carter G. Woodson is, he is probably the most under-examined scholar and researcher of all time, and this is just a bias that I have. But in the ways that he understood how people learn, right? Miseducation is something that nobody deserves. And he recognized that, to create a communal progress, everybody has to be educated. Everybody has to be equipped with the skills, knowledge, and self-purpose to put on for their communities. And what's really important for Black students is to not be ashamed and to feel so proud to know, like, I'm getting this education, but it's not just for me. It's to make my family proud. It's to increase my own personal chances at, achieving my goals and desires, and to make this world better. And, that's another ethic, another more that Black History Month represents. So we're excited, man. We're excited. We have a lot to offer. And we just hope that, we get, a lot of participation from the academic departments, of course, folks who are on athletic teams and coaches, and then the community. We're centralized in a wonderful community. So hopefully folks, around this area can see some things that are interesting and come out.
You mentioned the courage to show out for your community. You're doing that here at Chicago State. That blossoms out into Chicago, blossoms out. So we start small and then think big. And Aremu, I appreciate you for the leadership you take, for teaching me, for teaching anyone who watches this, and looking forward to working with you for the month ahead. Thanks, Aremu.
Come on. Thank you, brother.